Welcome to Storytime at the Rubus, a weekly podcast about the Bonnaroo Music and Arts Festival. I'm your host, Sharla.
And I'm Daniel. How was your week this week, Sharla?
Are we talking about the week cumulative, or are we just talking about a couple days? Or it depends on how you define the week.
Oh, well, I was talking about the week after Tuesday, but we'll talk about that another time.
But we have a really big, exciting episode coming up for you guys, so we don't want to spend too much time.
Yeah. We had over an hour with Brad and Cory, and if you don't know these guys already, you probably do by now because they have been hanging out everywhere online in the past couple of weeks. Brad is the festival director of Bonnaroo, and Cory, I'm going to blow smoke for a moment because he does a lot of different things. Mainly he does Bonnaroo's marketing, but he wears many hats at Bonnaroo. He's one of the guys that helps make the show happen. We were excited to have them on for well over an hour. We went until 4:20 in the afternoon Central Time, coincidentally enough.
Nice.
Yeah, nice. They were on the What podcast last week. You should definitely go give that a listen as well. But we intentionally talked about a lot of different things. We talked about what we can expect on the lineup, how the lineup works, new things coming to Outeroo, a little bit about inside baseball, about how marketing for Bonnaroo works. That's Sharla's area of expertise too, so she wanted to talk with Cory about that. And if you listen closely, apparently we got a lot of hints about what is to come, especially towards the end. So check that out. I think we dropped some juicy info in this. So Sharla, first of all, we should probably talk to a few of our new listeners that we will have since we have a big interview on this week. As you already heard, I'm Daniel. This is Sharla. We, for many years now, have been driving the Rubus to Bonnaroo, but for the past year or so, our focus has been our new Totem organization, right, Sharla?
Right. Totem is a 501c3 that supports the next generation of festival attendees through mentorships and scholarships.
Yeah, and you can learn more about that at totemfnd.org. And we do something really cool with our podcast. We do a Patreon like many other podcasts do these days. But 100% of everything that we collect through that Patreon goes to the Totem Foundation. So you are supporting a 501c3 through that. And it does a lot of cool things. We had 3 scholarship recipients this past year. We do a mentorship program. But you know what? Just go check out the website so you can learn more. But Sharla, do you want to list off our Patreons for this podcast?
Sure, absolutely. Courtney, Casey with Texas Roo Crew.
Hey.
Christy, Charmel, Jums, Sarah, David and Aurora, String Bean, Taylor, Zach and Jeremy, Amber, Andrea, JB, Sam, Austin, James, Chelsea, aka Hygiene Queen, Ryan, Chris and Shy, Dan, Ernst, Harris, Keith, Casey, Amanda, Aaron, Nick, Maddie, McFerg, Bruce, Kent and Emily, Randy, Eric and Ben, Evan, Jay, Chloe, and Sean.
Thank you, everyone, for all of your support. And if you would like to hear your name listed there and support the next generation of Bonnaroovians, you can find us at patreon.com/Rubus. Again, 100% of everything goes to the Totem Foundation. Now, like Sharla said, we aren't going to waste a lot of time at the beginning of this episode. We might come back at the end a little bit and talk with you some more. But with no further ado, let's get into this great conversation that we just had with Brad and Cory from Bonnaroo. All right, hey everybody. The two guys we're going to be talking with today really need no introduction. You have heard them on our show and on the What podcast. And frankly, you guys have been a little bit of everywhere recently on Twitter and on Discord and pretty much any Roo space that people can find you. So thanks for being so transparent and hanging out with us all the time, guys. That is something I think everybody really appreciates.
It's a ton of fun, man. We enjoy it, but like Cory said, we got to make sure we don't get ourselves in trouble. That's the hardest part.
You know, that might actually be one of my first questions. Have you gotten in trouble with any of that kind of stuff before?
Not yet.
No, not yet.
We've got some side eyes. We've got some side eyes for some stuff, but no one's actually gotten mad at us.
We'll get some passive. We'll get some passive comments in the office of, well, be careful what you say around Cory and Brad. They'll go put it on Reddit.
I feel like that actually helps your reputation, like amongst any corporate structure. Like, oh yeah, those guys that run Bonnaroo, they're a little out of pocket. Like that's how it should be, honestly.
We're definitely not traditional.
I want to start on a good foot. So, like, you guys were talking on the Festiverse Discord about a week ago about how you were checking everyone's feedback all the time. And clearly, everybody knows that you're always hanging around like Big Brother on Discord or whatever it may be these days. You were talking about how you can sometimes take feedback to heart. I want to start out on a good positive note. I want to hear from each of you what was the most positive feedback that you got about Bonnaroo this past year from anybody online or in person for that matter?
Oh, I already know what mine is. Yeah. The best thing I heard, sort of in the off season and come out of last year was that everybody felt OG vibes at Bonnaroo this year.
Ooh.
That's like the biggest compliment you can get because like, yeah, go, yeah. I don't even need to elaborate. I feel like that's the biggest compliment you can get.
Well, I do want you to elaborate. What do you think gives it OG vibes like that?
To me, OG vibes is like when you show up and you feel like everyone is like already friends with you,
Yeah.
and you can't do anything wrong, like everything is just exactly how it should be. And it just kind of well, and it just kind of feels like you're nowhere in particular. You know what I mean?
Yeah. For me, it's kind of like, oh, you can do anything and be a reasonable idiot and not be judged, and everybody's it.
Yes.
That's the kind of vibes that I love.
Yeah, you're like walking through the campground, like singing a Steely Dan song really loud, like pretty buzzed, and no one's giving you weird looks.
You are a
All
fool to
the,
do that dirty work.
all the kids,
Yeah.
there's one of those OG Bonnaroo old heads right there walking around singing Steely Dan.
One time we were like walking through the campgrounds just singing Black Cow, and we were like bringing the wine bag with us, and we just started throwing it at each other.
Oh my God. I can't talk about my stupidest stories because you guys might not let me come back.
Oh, you're always welcome. You're always welcome back.
Uh,
That's the good thing about Bonnaroo. All are
Yeah,
always.
someone's definitely topped you.
you're right. Well, Brad, how about you? What was the most positive thing that you heard about this past year?
I think, and this is an answer that really comes from our staff, but I'll elaborate on why I think it's important for the fan, is we had a lot of staff compliment like our leadership team about how they felt like this was one of the smoothest years of operating Bonnaroo, which is really challenging just based on just the scale and how many people it actually takes to pull off the show. And the reason I think I think there's a direct relation to that and the experience of the fan and the sentiment that we got from the fan this past year about just like what Cory is saying, the sentiment of feeling like OG Bonnaroo. And we talk a lot in our all staff meetings. I always make a point to bring up that, the attitude of our staff it's almost like a disease. It can directly translate into the attitude of the fan. Like if a security guy at a stage is having a bad time and then he interacts with an artist and that artist now starts having a bad day and then
Yeah.
that artist goes out on stage and doesn't put their best show up, that translates out into the audience. Or a fan has a really bad interaction with a security guard. Like the attitude of our staff is so crucial to the success of the show in the sense of it can if our staff are having a bad day, our fans can just as quickly have a bad day. And so to hear the fans saying that they felt like it was a really great year, and also hear our own staff saying that it was one of the easiest years they've ever worked on the show, I think it's just a testament to like the kind of symbiotic relationship between the staff and fan at these things and how important it is.
Yeah. That kind of way that you put a city together and everything is something that I want to come back around to in a few moments. But talking about the vibes that both of you were talking about, I know it can be different for you guys on the other side of the fence, but for us in the campgrounds and on the fan side, like for those of us that have been going for like a decade, little less, a little more, like it felt like things were really on point this year. And it was because of that indescribable feeling that you can't really verbalize. Like the vibes were just good. That's the only way that you can put it. For me, the moment where I was like, oh, this is a good year was like I went from Krungbin over to J-Rad and everybody was just being so positive. It was what I describe many times, the best party on the planet. It was in that moment I was like, whoa, this is the best one in a good while. For you guys, what was the moment that you realized like, whoa, this is a good one. We're doing a good job here. Was there like a specific time that you realized like, oh, this is it?
I think It was sometime, I can't remember the specific moment. There was some point on Saturday of the show that Cory and I can't remember if we were having a meeting about something specific, but we really we sat down for a second, kind of taking a break, catching up on things, and we started talking about just all the positive feedback we were already seeing on socials and like everywhere, and that we could really feel this tangible excitement from the fan. But I don't think there was any like singular moment that caused that. I think it was just taking a breath and hearing all of the feedback in real time and just going out there, man, and just seeing it, seeing the people, even though it's, 95 degrees and miserable and not a spot of rain in sight, like people just having the best time of their life. Whenever you have a really hot day, that usually translates into some negative feedback on socials. Like, even though the weather has nothing to do with us, we can't control it. Like that mentality kind of feeds into people just having complaints about things.
Hmm.
And there was nothing going on, dude. There was nothing on socials other than people just praying that we were going to move Chapel Roan to a bigger stage, which is
I think that was the only thing that the weather really impacted in people's minds was like when we thought that we were going to have to go see her in a tent, everybody was just resigned to the fact like, oh, we're about to get baked and not in the normal way.
Yeah, yeah.
Cory, was there a specific moment that you realized that, oh, this is a really good one?
I caught my first like high dose of vibes when I went out to check out Shotgunaroo. Like I was like, I gotta see this. And I got out there and it was just like the entire horseshoe in front of the arch completely packed with people. And everyone was like, we had like a little playlist at like when you're going into the arch. And I made it to be just sing-alongs, like 100% sing-along bangers. And people like were like actively participating and like just like ripping My Chemical Romance out there. And I was like, oh yeah, we're in for a good one.
Wait, what song were you doing? The Black Parade? By the way, this confirms nothing for next year's lineup, but was it Black Parade or something
I
else?
think it was, yeah, I think it was Black Parade.
That's a good sing along for all of us elder
It was
millennials.
so funny.
I
Yeah.
love Shotgunaroo because that's one of those traditions that have just like organically cropped up that obviously so many people are into now. You don't see that at many of these other festivals.
No.
So, guys, we're going to talk a little bit about like what's coming up next year and talk about things on our side in Outeroo. But I did have a number of questions for you about the lineup itself. So, when we had you on the show before, it was after the lineup had come out. This time, we're talking with you while it's kind of, as I'm sure you know, rumor season, and all of us are trying to read the tea leaves and guess what's going to be on the poster. So, I got a couple of questions for that. First of all, I guess this is for both of you, but probably primarily Brad. How do you see Rue's lineup in comparison to other festivals that you compete with or that are within your portfolio? Do you still see Bonnaroo on the same level as Coachella or Glastonbury, or is it something different or more regional now?
um I think that, and I would love to hear Cory's thoughts on this. I definitely still see us as a competitor in the space with the Coachellas, Lollapaloozas, ACLs of the world, right? Like we are one of the premier festivals in the United States, like period. I don't think anyone would argue that. I think that all festivals, Coachella included in the conversation, have found it more challenging to stick out with the lineup they're able to provide because of one, the smaller number of headlining acts that are available out in the industry, and two, the number of festivals that exist. Like when Coachella and Bonnaroo first came around, there was it's funny, I was just watching, I found a DVD when Cory and I were in Austin the other night, or a couple months ago. I found a DVD from Bonnaroo from 2004, and I was watching it at my house last night. And one of the clips was Dave Matthews. It was the year that Dave Matthews and Friends was one of the headliners, and Trey played with the Nashville Symphony Orchestra, 2004.
Oh,
One of the clips is Dave. They're riding into the festival on the bus with Dave, and Dave is like, there's no other rock and roll festivals that exist in the US like this. And that was true at the time. There were not these large scale outdoor events, right? Like it just wasn't a thing. We were already 15 years behind Europe. and now Coachella, Bonnaroo, Lala all kind of come to fruition at the same time, um, offering an experience that really had not been offered. Um, and, especially coming right after the time when Woodstock 99 had been a huge failure. So there was a opportunity to correct the course there and provide what would actually be a great experience. And so we've just come a long ways from it's a completely different environment that we compete in now. And that's the biggest challenge. I think we're still up there. Like if you ask somebody, what are the top 5 premier festivals in the United States? I mean, Bonnaroo makes the list 10 out of 10 in my opinion. Yeah.
I want to hear what Cory has to say on this too, but I have kind of a question that goes along with this. So I think something that's important for all of us that are playing along at home with rumor season is keeping our expectations in check. Like we aren't going to get McCartney and the Rolling Stones and all that. That world is just no longer existing. The market for booking big events like Rube, it's changed a lot. You and I have talked about this on Twitter a little bit. I'm curious if you could explain to like those of us on that side camping and regular attendees, how is it different now compared to like pre-COVID? Like how should we keep our expectations in check for what will be on the lineup?
I mean, I don't think anything's off limits. Like you never know when, Paul McCartney's gonna wake up and want to come play a festival. Like it's a different energy for the artist. It's a whole different experience. Like there's always gonna be that moment where, an artist takes a pay cut because they want to come do a festival instead of an arena show or a stadium show because it's just a different experience for them too. But like the amount of money an artist can make in a stadium is much more than a festival is going to be able to pay them. And so there's a list that gets ruled out just by the bottom line, unless that artist just really wants to do it. Um, and I think that's one reason why you see artists that play stadiums play Glastonbury. Like Brad said, they've got 15, 20 years on us. And that place is like the farm special, that place is very, very special. And it is very much Bonnaroo vibes out there. And I can see why it would be a bucket list for artists.
Yeah.
And Bonnaroo's on a lot of artists' bucket lists too. But I mean, yeah, it all just boils down to, competition, and who's psyched on it. So I would say personally, I don't think any artist is ever off the table. I think that some of those, big long shot artists are still big long shot artists, but it doesn't mean that we're not talking to them and that they won't ever play. But I don't think that you could, expect a Paul McCartney to play music festivals every single year because there's going to be multiple years where Coachella doesn't have one of those. We don't have one of those. Lala doesn't have one of those. It's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah. So Brad, that kind of goes to my question is like, where are we in the marketplace? Should we realistically expect those big blockbuster headliners are in the future, or are they going to be more rare from now on?
I want to give a little clarification to some stuff that Cory's saying because he's totally right. But I just want to add something that I think's important to the mix is just pointing out that 15 years ago, we didn't have to rely on an artist wanting to play Bonnaroo because we could compete with paying them the money that they could make on their own show. And now we cannot compete with that. The business of secondary ticketing that has created these additional revenue platforms for artists has made it where, and we're talking about the 1% of artists, right? We're talking about the Lady Gagas, the Beyoncés, the Taylor Swifts, the real core legacy acts like maybe you'd throw the Eagles in that batch. They just one, a lot of those guys, they don't, money's not an incentive to get off the couch, right? So that's the first thing. And second, just like what Cory is saying is Bonnaroo is still a festival, just like Coachella and Lolla, that's really important. A really important like kind of milestone, I think, in an artist's career if you can headline or be a penultimate or headline the Witch stage. But the money conversation, as much as we hate to say it, like is still a real part of the conversation, right? It's really hard to say. I'm just using round numbers here. it's really hard for us to go to an artist and say, hey, the max we can offer this artist is $2.5 million, and they can go play Nissan Stadium and make six.
Yeah.
So, we're never going to be able to, we're never going to pay a headliner $6 million. Like, it's just not a thing that we're able to do.
That
I
is
think
kind
you
of
can
cool,
do,
though.
I think you can do like really dumb math there too. It's like, it's not uncommon to pay $400 to see a stadium act, like for an average ticket price. Like you're dropping 4 or 5 grand to sit in the first 5 or 6 rows, and then everything but the nosebleeds, you're up $300, $400. A Bonnaroo ticket is 350, 400, $450. So, and we've got 180 bands out there. So,
Yeah.
like, you do the rough math there, and you realize real quick that that doesn't work too well.
Well, Cory, you don't have to sell to us too hard. Anybody listening to that, it's a good deal.
But
Um,
to answer your question though, Daniel, back to the original point,
yeah.
the way that we stand out is what we've always done, in my opinion, is be tastemakers and be present an undercard that is, even if you don't believe us yet, the best that you're going to be able to see out there. All of the best music. I've kind of hinted at this on Discord, but we got a lot of pushback on the Fred booking for Sunday last year. And after that show happened on Sunday, I didn't hear back from any of those people that were originally complaining or questioning the booking, because they came, they saw the show, and they understood why we put him in the place that we did. And I think that those are the things we have to do. And sometimes they're going to be optically uh, confusing for a fan, maybe, but you might have saw this, Daniel, because I know you're in there a bunch, but fans complain so much about the same headliners on all these festivals. And then when we go out of our way and book something that's not the norm, that's being booked everywhere else, they complain about, why are you
Yeah.
booking something that's not a headliner? So to an extent, you just have to trust our team, our talent buyers, to know what they're talking about and know that what they're providing you is someone that's worthy of being in that slot.
It is
Um,
kind of a catch 22. And that kind of leads me into something else that I wanted to ask about that's very related. Like, when it comes to booking talent, how much of a gamble are you guys willing to take? It seems like there's a lot of pressure between a lot of different factors. Like for Cory selling tickets, for all of you keeping Rue have that flavor and staying weird, booking stuff like Fred that is going to blow up after the fact. Do you ever feel like, oh, we're taking too much of a risk here? Maybe we're playing it a little too safe. How do you balance all that?
That's a good question. Um, I mean, I think we always try to start with what we're hearing from our fans, like if we can get somebody that we're seeing on socials and Reddit and Discord and surveys and etc., we should just go on and do that. But I think it's also fun to take some shots and put some stuff out there that you don't see anybody talking about.
Yeah. One of my first and favorite shows I ever saw at Bonnaroo was way back in 2013. This band from Athens, Georgia, Reptar. They never did really truly blow up as much as I love them. I saw them open for Moontax a year later, but I still have a special place in my heart for them because it was this weird type of genre that I never heard since or again. And if they played again, I don't even know if they're back together. If they did, I would show up big time because they were something that was kind of like what the bookers at the time knew would be for somebody like me that really loved weird stuff like that. So I've always respected that.
Mhm.
I think the way that we're able to take risk on just putting bands in front of fans that we maybe don't have the data to support, but we feel like they're ahead of the curve, maybe, is just the fact that we have so many slots to put bands in on a show like Bonnaroo.
Mm,
So, those slots that you're filling early in the day in the tents, um, or on the Who stage, like that's really where we can kind of take kind of risk-free action to really just put out there what we think is great live music and not necessarily have to worry about hard ticket sales or streaming data or anything like that. Um, I think from a headliner perspective, like you know, let's say the top 8 names that are on the lineup, we have to be pretty calculated there, and we have to take risk within those top 8, but we also have to have some stuff in there that we know are home runs, right?
Yeah.
If we have 8 things that we're not really strong on any of them, then that's a little worrisome. But if we've got 3 people that we want to take a shot at and 5 people that we know are home runs for the Bonnaroo fan, then that makes us feel really good. And the thing that I always harp on and want to remind here while we're chatting about this is, putting together a festival lineup is kind of like cooking a meal at your neighbor's house. Like you only can work with what's in the kitchen that you've been given to work in, right? Like we can have this huge wish list of artists, but are they touring that year? Are they even in the United States in June? Are they anywhere near Manchester, Tennessee, a very specific 4 days in June, right? And if they're not, do we want to pay money to make them be near Manchester,
Yeah.
Tennessee in that window? That's another calculation of like, okay, this is a really core Bonnaroo band, but they're in Europe and they're willing to come all the way back to play, but their fees double what it normally would be.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Brad,
that's just I'm
that's
just
a
making
really
that up as
professional
like a
way of saying, let me cook.
yeah, yeah, dude, exactly. And that's why, Benson and Steve and all and Kayla, everyone on our talent team, like they've got the hardest job, man, because they're under a ton of scrutiny and they're under a ton of pressure to deliver. And people just somehow always get lost in the fact that this is out of our control. Like we're handed a bag of groceries and we just got to cook the best meal that we can with with what's in the bag. Like that's just what it is.
Yes, chef.
So, something that we always see online and something that people always ask about is the radius clause. And when I kind of researched this question, there was an old article from the Tennessean, but it was like so old, it's from 2014. So, how does the radius clause really play into effect in 2024, 2025? Is that still a thing? Is it set in stone or does it essentially vary?
The radius clause is fully at our discretion. Um,
Oh, interesting.
and
As you usually say, interesting.
yeah, what I mean by that is if there's an artist we really, really want, and we have a standard radius clause across all shows. It's not Bonnaroo specific. It's a standard that gets put into any festival offer that we send out as C3. But we can make changes to that. We can make changes to that based on a specific offer to a specific artist, just based on the want to have them. Like we can make the conscious decision of, hey, uh, I'm just gonna make this up. We want your band to play Bonnaroo. Here's the offer, and they say, "Oh, the band would love to play, but we're playing Shaky Knees already, and
Uh,
it's in the radius, right?" And that's a situation where we're kind of competing with ourselves, but we have to decide: is that fan a fan that we're trying to get to come to Bonnaroo or not? Like if you look at something like Railbird, right? It takes place what 2 weekends before Bonnaroo, and it's definitely within the radius clause of the show. Lexington, Kentucky is. But we have to look and go, okay, do we care that this artist is going to advertise that they're playing at Railbird? Because do we think any Railbird fan that's going to go see them is going to somehow make the magic decision that they're going to come to Bonnaroo instead?
yeah.
Or is it a completely different fan for that artist that's going to come to Bonnaroo than who's going to go to Railbird? So, and sometimes it's competing festivals, right? It's someone outside the organization. So it just depends. Like I've seen us make exceptions to a radius clause for an artist, and I've seen us tell them very firmly, like, we won't entertain, anything else within this radius that you guys are going to do. Like, if you're going to accept our offer, we're the only show that you're going to play in this area in this time frame.
Okay.
So it's kind of case by case.
Okay, we thought so, but this is one of those things where like a lot of us had been guessing for probably years, and I don't think we had known for sure. So I appreciate you just telling us how it works.
Mhm.
So I got one more lineup type question, and I'm going to let you off the hook with these kind of things, and I promise it isn't Tame Impala this time. So one thing that I've noticed at Rue for forever is there seems to be certain slots on the lineup. So, for example, it always feels like there's a throwback act. One of my favorites was Third Eye Blind back in 2016. And, we've had Cake, a lot of others like that. We have a trippy late night act, whether it be somebody like Flume or Pretty Lights last year, and then there's usually like an alt country act. Is that on purpose? And do you kind of intend to keep that pattern?
Yeah, that's definitely on purpose. And it evolves over time too. Like the last couple of years, we've tried to work in some more of the, stuff from like the emo era. Because that stuff kind of it's coming back around and everybody loves it and it's super fun to sing along to. And all those bands are kind of like really excited to play right now because like some like I don't know, it's just in like everybody's really excited on that kind of music. Um, but it's like jam at Bonnaroo is never going to go away.
Thank
Um,
you.
and so you have to have but you have to like figure out where that fits with all the other music. And so like that's a slot that gets filled. And like if you were at the T-Pain show at Which Stage last year, you saw that crowd was like absolutely insane. So it's obvious that like, throwback hip hop's well, not throwback, but like kind of throwback hip hop stuff works really well and is super fun. Like the 3-6 show also. So like, yeah, stuff like that. And it's all trial and error too. Like sometimes you'll put something out there, you're like, I thought that crowd was going to be bigger. And then you'll put something out there that you thought would be fun, but I didn't know that entire field was going to be full for T-Pain last year, if I'm being honest. I knew that was going to be a fun show, but I didn't know it was going to be packed like that.
I
So we learn
personally,
something every year too.
I personally had a harder time getting a good spot for T-Pain than I did Chapel Roan. That was insane that night.
It was outrageous and it was so fun.
Well, you need to talk to our friend JB that was on the rail. He's T-Pain's best friend now because he has that flag that said it was the Google search for T-Pain. It was like, did you mean Tylenol pain relief? And T-Pain saw that and loved it.
It's pretty funny.
We're BFFs now.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that like we've talked about, especially the last few years coming out of COVID, is like we have a big enough roster, like lineup, just pure numbers wise, to be able to do fun stuff that's not like especially cohesive or curated. Like it doesn't all have to be like, really great underground, like indie rock or psych rock or like, all this like super artistic stuff. Like we can book stuff because it's fun and we can book stuff because we know it's going to be a good time or it'll just be very interesting to see that on the farm, like a corn show late night, like stuff like that. It's like that's not like the first band that you would imagine being booked for Bonnaroo, but everyone agrees that it was absolutely insane.
Or the
Sometimes you
Lonely Island. Lonely Island in
yeah.
2015. Still one of my favorites to this day.
That's a good example of you guys being tastemakers because sometimes we see those surprises on the lineup and we didn't know we wanted it that bad until we see it,
Mhm.
And it's like, of course that makes sense. Like War doing all of their insane stuff last year. I don't think anybody was begging for that, but it made so much more sense. And like that was so fun last year, seeing them literally everywhere.
Our talent team's really creative. I mean, when they first come to Brad and I, like once they start digging in on the next year, they always hit us with some stuff that I'm just like, man, I wouldn't have thought of that, but that's a really fun idea.
All right, Charlie, you want to take these next few? All right, we're going to let you off the hook with these lineup questions. We got a few about like what's coming up
Those
next.
weren't too bad.
Start talking about 2025. So I'm gonna start with Brad. If you had to pick one thing in terms of the fan experience that you wanted to improve, what would you improve?
If I could, without worrying about the cost or execution or anything, if I could just make the entire farm shaded, I would do that. And so that's something that we are continuing to look at more options of shade for next year, both in the campgrounds and in Cinderoo. Like you guys know, it's just such a challenge to get it out of the sun there. So that's something we're really focused on. We're focused on it every year, but for next year, we've got a couple of cool, no pun intended, cool solutions that we're looking at that are definitely different than what we've tried before. So
The big ass fans in the tent was one of the best investments that you made in recent years. That thing,
100%.
those things make such a huge improvement.
Shout out big ass fans.
Yeah. Are you guys sponsored, bro?
I don't know. Tell them they can
I
make a
mean,
donation to Totem anytime.
yeah, all these answers are boring, but I would just say like We've definitely been talking a lot about what more we can do. I mean, we've introduced like we built permanent restrooms in Centeroo, which is a nice change of pace for people in addition to, portos. We're continuing to add, flushables everywhere we can. And just I think increasing the volume and cleaning frequency and all that stuff is just like an absolute game changer. So that's definitely something that I think is important.
Yeah, those are appreciated too. That makes a hell of a big difference in the plazas, I can tell you.
It's not the most fun thing to talk about, but it
Well, it
is
makes a
it is
difference. Yeah.
important. Hmm.
All right, Charlie, get the next one.
Okay, so one of the things that we hear as a group, we've heard from a lot of women, especially about security. There's been several women I know that have came up to our group and talked about, they've been catcalled by different security and different things like that. Is that something that you guys have taken a look at? And what are some room, for improvement on that process?
Yeah, I'll start there and I'll let Brad finish. But I would say like generally speaking, like if you guys see shit like that going on or it happens to you, reach out to our guest services team. You can do that with the info app. You can do that by scanning the SafeS QR codes. Um, you can find basically anybody with a radio and just make sure we know about it and make sure we know about it as soon as possible. Like I really don't want people to think that nothing's going to happen and not to wait. But the reality is like those people rotate all day. And if someone's doing something and we know the location that it happened and we find out and we can address it immediately, it's much easier for us. So I just want to encourage folks like we really want to know about it and we really want to act fast. So please, please, please let us know. And Brad, if you have anything to add there.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to, and I don't want any of this to sound like an excuse. I really just want to talk about like the reality of the challenges that we face because, you know, safety security is our number one priority for our fans. If anyone's having a bad experience, the only way we can figure out how to solve it is by one knowing about it. And so that's really key for us. But, Bonnaroo, we have, I think this past year's count was around 1,100 security spots that we have to fill across the entire festival. That includes the guys that are at the barricaded stages, the people in the campgrounds, the people working backstage. And to put into perspective, a security call for a normal NFL game is about 175.
Jeez.
So it is a huge operation. Those guys and girls, um, most of them sleep on site. They eat meals. They work out 12 hours a day in the sun. It's not an easy job. And like I said, I'm not giving them any excuses for any behavior, but it is a very unrewarding job but a very necessary one for us. So we have to we have to delicately balance um, taking care of those staff and getting them to where they will actually show up to work for us, and then convincing them to work in really sometimes, quite frankly, shitty conditions for 4 and 5 days, right? And they're sleeping in a tent in a cot, um, and they're eating our catering every day. So it's always one of the top conversations we have every year, is around security. We bring people in from as far as New Orleans. It's very challenging to get the amount of people that we need for that show. Um, to the farm because it's more than what can just be pulled from Nashville or Atlanta. Like it takes a lot of different security companies from all over the Southeast to help us get our numbers. So we always want to hear the feedback, and it's always a priority for us to make sure that um, we're providing a safe and comfortable experience for everybody that shows up.
And I do want to give credit. There are a lot of people that do a
Mhm.
fantastic job. There's people at the gate when you come into Sinru that are giving the type of positive energy that you talked about before, Brad. And I want to give a shout out to many of the people that work the pit over in the what pit and the which pit. They do a lot to keep that energy going as well. I do want to move over to, and thank you for addressing that, guys. I know that's
Mhm.
not one of the most fun things to talk about, but I do think a lot of people have said it's important to them. I want to move over to like the overall fan experience too. So this is a fun one. Both of you took kind of like a fun field trip to Glastonbury this past year. for you, what was a few of the non-lineup things that you saw there that you would like to steal from Glastonbury and bring back to the farm?
I can take this. I think I think one thing that I noticed is and this is coming from someone who's spent many a Bonnaroo in Outeroo in a tent. Um we have it a little bit better than they do as far as the setup goes. The way they do their camping there is they have a giant wall that surrounds the entire venue, and all the cars park outside of the wall, and then you have to carry all your shit in, and everybody camps in the venue where all the music is. So a lot of campers are walking like 1 or 2 miles with all their gear, and then you set up. You can't have gazebos, no awnings, like no pop-ups. It's just tents, and they're all right on top of each other. So I would say, like, as far as that goes, we were like, okay, this is almost like a value add of
Yeah.
Bonnaroo. Like
I was gonna
like you
say,
get
don't steal some
your
of those
car with
ideas. Yeah.
yeah, you get your car with all your shit. But the good thing that they have going for them, and I know that you and I have talked about the weather there before. We
Yeah.
didn't get rain when we were there. And so it was just like mid 60s and just awesome the whole time. So you didn't need quite as much to protect yourself from the heat. And I mean, I don't know, the people that go to that show are just in it, man. Like, I don't think they care where they sleep. I was impressed with their resiliency. I'll say that. So that's one thing I picked up, which was a positive. I don't know, Brad, what do you got?
You know, a lot of things that we do with Bonnaroo, like it was built off of the DNA of what Glastonbury is. Like, it's the world's premier music festival, like, end of sentence. There's nothing else I think that competes with it. We talk a lot about with Bonnaroo how it's about how Bonnaroo is about much more than just the music and the bands that are on stage. And I think with Glastonbury, they take that like even 10 steps further. Like,
Hmm.
they've got two primary stages where you'll see like the Avril Lavigne's, Dua Lipa's, Coldplay's of the world, but all the other stages, which there are literally 100, all the other stages, like, you wouldn't know anybody playing on any of those stages. It's really about just creating community, and the amount of stuff they're doing there on property that is not music focused is incredible. And I'd love for us to be able to do that. It's really, what I'll say is that they've done a great job of that, because for us it's a really hard balance of saying that you want to create a space that's about more than the music, but also acknowledging that the bands you book or who's actually going to sell the tickets. And I think that, they've got a 20-year head start on us, for really creating a brand that people just know they want to go to even without the lineup. And we're lucky that we have a large amount of Bonnaroo fans that, are going to purchase in this blind presale that we're going to have here soon, um, which is not something that's typical with festivals in the United States, right? Not a lot of people buying blindly to an event. So we don't take that for granted at all. Um, but
But they'll sell every single ticket they have before the lineup comes
Good.
out.
200,000 tickets.
Hmm.
So,
Um,
Brad, you hit on something that I feel like is very close to what we have had at Bonnaroo in the past, like that multitude of different things that you can do in that gigantic campground over at Glastonbury is very similar to what we have already with the plazas. And, one thing that I remember having heard in the past, Chance the Rapper, one year he was the mayor of Bonnaroo unofficially. He had joked that, like, oh, Bonnaroo was one of his favorites because there's, such a variety of things to do. Back in the day, it was the cinema and comedy tents. And I know you guys do that differently now. We don't have dedicated tents for it. It happens in the plazas and different places. Is that stuff being actively reincorporated just in a different way than it was? Like, do you miss those cinema and comedy tents? Like, how might we bring that kind of stuff back?
Yeah, I mean, I think that stuff's just really expensive to do, man.
Oh,
You
well.
know, it's like you end up in a position where it's like, okay, do we, you know, book this band and this band that everybody really wants, or do we want to build a movie theater over here? It's like, do we want to put a comedy club, in Outeroo, or do we want to book this bigger EDM artist than we would have been able to afford? And I think with Bonnaroo, we always lean a little bit towards the music because I think Bonnaroo is a little bit more about the music. And the other stuff is kind of like it may be equal parts, but with Glastonbury, it felt like to me that it almost even wasn't a music fest. It was more of just like a big get together where they had music. You know what I mean?
I do know what
Yeah,
you
they
mean. I go
would.
to one every June.
Yeah. No, I mean you're right, but it just feels like I don't know when you're in a situation where you're able to sell every single ticket you have without telling people what bands will be there,
Yeah.
then that's what you do. But if you're in a situation where you sell 15% of the tickets you have without telling people what bands, and then the rest after you tell them the bands, then there's something that goes off in your head and you're like, all right, we ought to nail these bands,
Yeah. No, that makes a ton of
So that's
sense.
kind of
Yeah.
the trade-off.
Yeah. So, like, okay, speaking of all of the fun stuff in the campgrounds, you want to take the next one, Charles?
So, talking about the group area. So we get asked this question a lot, and I'm pretty sure I already know the answer to it, but because we get asked it so much. So the group area is really where a lot of the community and fan driven events take place. So like we've got the Red Beer Exchange, we've got the Squeak Squad and Robust Tuesday party.
We're going to leave somebody out.
Yeah, probably leave somebody out. But have you guys ever thought about expanding the group area? And if you did, what would that look like?
I think that uh, the hardest part about the the hardest thing about Bonnaroo is how much and I'm specifically referencing this from like an operational perspective. Every square inch out there is give or take, right? If we give to some group, we're taking away from something else, just by the nature of how much land we have and how much we really need to utilize it all. And I think group has always been an important focus for us. One, because it's really the hub of community for Bonnaroo, and two, you all have done an incredible job of programming for yourself, which is like, what could Cory and I ask for other than fans who will like come up with their own programming, right? And let us support you in doing that. Um, I think maybe what we have not done a really great job of, I think we've done it at a surface level, but maybe we need to like, Cory, let's just make a note in real time here of like, if we can figure out a way to source directly better info from group people, kind of like how we did the music census, but if we can come up with something that's specifically aimed at hitting up group people to really try to get a secondary, like a deeper level of response on what they want and what they are looking for. Because I think right now we kind of go off of just what we see, Reddit and Discord and, all these places where we know group people are, we kind of see feedback there. But I don't know if we've ever done a really great job at directly, per se, pulling group people into a room and just asking them questions and saying, hey, we want to know what you guys really
Well,
want.
Brad, since we're kind of working in real time here, I think one thing I can tell you is a lot of these conversations with group are happening in places that aren't necessarily public. Like, for instance, we have a Discord for our group where we're kind of 365 days a year talking about crazy stuff that we'll do next year. I know there's like a private group for Reddit, for example. So, yeah, a lot of those conversations aren't public, not because we don't want them to be. We're just kind of like being goofballs in our own little corners of the internet. So yeah, you're right. There probably is a lot that could be learned from that type of thing. And that's great that you guys are looking for that type of info. That is honestly, not to blow smoke, one of the things that makes this the greatest party on earth, because you guys are looking for that kind of thing.
And there's a lot of info out there, brother. There's a ton of info to collect
Yeah.
from a lot of different people. But I think Cory and I think we do a hell of a job of trying to figure out where those spots are and, crowdsourcing per se as much as we can.
Hmm.
Yeah, my general like what I've picked up from talking to you guys and being present in those communities where a bunch of group people are, and then talking to Jenna is that y'all just want infrastructure. You guys want us to support what you want to do, which is what we've been trying to do. I think the first year when group moved over to that new location, we kind of went a little bigger with that stage over there and stuff. And that felt like it was too much. Like that was kind of I think there were a couple moments out there that were awesome. And then I went out to a couple other shows out there where just nobody was there. And that was kind of our fault because it's like, I think I was at a show there at like 5 or 6 in the afternoon, and it's like no one's in the campground right now. Everyone's in Bonnaroo, and there's nobody at this stage that was wildly expensive. So I think the move long term, like as far as we're perceiving it, is like let's really lean in out there on like Tuesday and Wednesday and make that the place to be. And I think we'll definitely see some strides there.
Okay.
And then just general like, plaza infrastructure, obviously.
So I've got a follow up to this, and Charlotte's got a few marketing questions for you, Cory, and I got one last question before we get out of here. But my follow up to that is group is really cool because it's where many of us get to essentially collaborate with you guys to do something that's kind of between unofficial and official, like somewhere in that gray area. And that
Hmm.
works fantastically for like the Wednesday events that like Maddie and Andrew are planning, for example.
Hmm.
I'm curious if you guys have ever considered ways that the hardcore root audience could be more involved in other ways. Like, I'll give you a quick 10-second pitch. I've always thought it would be awesome if you had veteran and involved Bonnaroovians introduce a band on one of the stages. I don't know if that would ever logistically work, but that's always been one of my dream things. Have you ever thought of any other ways that like you could involve the community with things in Sinru or elsewhere?
It's a fun idea.
Let's talk
No,
on
but
that
I
later.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, I like that. I like that. I
Can you
like anything
imagine
along those
Pondo, for
lines.
example, like introducing some metal band? It would be off the chain. But yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. We're definitely open to anything in that world. Be fun.
Brad, how about you? Has there ever been anything that you've considered that more deeply integrates fans into the overall programming?
We've done some really cool stuff with some partners like Propeller, in ways of trying to one just create goodwill and generate, stuff on the charitable end of the event, but offer these really cool experiences to fans. I'd love to find a way to. I think my challenge is always like inherently the cool ideas we can come up with are going to be so unique and challenging that it's only going to be a few people that you're able to actually affect with it, right? And it's like, do I want to do something that makes four people have an incredible Bonnaroo, or spend my time with Cory digging into ideas for group that will improve the experience of 6,000 people that are out in group. So there's a good balance there of just like bandwidth, I think, if that's a way to put it.
That makes
Yeah, that's
sense.
true.
That makes a lot of sense.
Because yeah, I'd love to
Can't do
have,
everything. Yeah.
yeah, and I'd love to have the ability to have a fan, come up and introduce Paramore or whatever. Like that's a really cool moment. And yeah, Cory can probably get some cool content from that has value to us. But I think a lot of times we focus, we lose track of those little moments because we're really focused on like the big picture things of making a ton of people's weekend a cooler time, rather than one or two people.
Yeah. That makes
I don't
total
mean
sense.
I don't mean that as a cop out answer either.
No, like there's only so much that you can spread yourself thin with. I totally get it.
Yeah.
I'll say though, I think I probably certain times of the year do have the bandwidth to do a little more of that.
Okay, well
So
then me and you can follow up then.
yeah, let's figure something out.
All right, Cory, I think Charlotte's going to put you on the spot. She does
Okay.
marketing too, so she's got a couple of
So
questions for
That's
you.
awesome.
I work at a college and I market mostly to Gen Z, and they are their tastes are very varied. I mean, just varies across the spectrum, whether we're talking about music taste or their hobbies, their interests. So, how
Hmm.
does Bonnaroo really market to that generation? And how have you really adapted the Bonnaroo experience to stay relevant to a Gen Z audience?
Good one.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you guys haven't gotten to meet him, but there's a gentleman by the name of Alex Roll that does our socials for us, and he is fantastic, and he's very witty, and his meme work is unmatched. So I think stuff like that, like, staying I'm a little bit older, as you know, and I'm up with all the trends and stuff, but I'm not actively out there creating content on social media generally. But as a festival, it is important for us to stay on trend, especially when it comes to, TikTok and meme culture, and actively participate. And it's really easy for us to do cool stuff on site on TikTok. I think that community generally values authenticity and just in the moment experiences. Most of the content that we've had go viral and do really well on that platform, which I know isn't just Gen Z anymore. It's pretty much everybody, but I think TikTok does still kind of get associated more with Gen Z than the other platforms.
Yeah.
And it is sort of at the cutting edge of like trends. But I think the stuff that does best for us is like real stuff in the moment with energy. All the EDM shows where the crowd's absolutely losing their mind at 3 in the morning, that kind of stuff always resonates. Obviously, Chapel Roan. Anything funny that we can dream up always works. So I think that's it. And I think for like, I mean, Gen Z and Bonnaroo is honestly a really big priority of mine. Because that's, that particular generation, like I was talking about this on a call earlier. When I was in high school and college, like the number one thing that we would do is like if I, started renting a house in college, first thing we do is build a fire pit, and we'd spend 3 or 4 nights a week out there drinking beer, whiskey, or cheap rum or whatever it was, and hanging out, man. And spring break was a camping trip. And I think that experience and just being outside and kind of like roughing it was like really a part of just what we did. And I think as things have gotten like more and more digital, um, it's not so forward facing. And so I think, coming to a festival like Bonnaroo, or anything that takes that kind of commitment and planning, and has that element of roughing it is challenging. So I think it's just like my priority is to just, use the intangibles of Bonnaroo and show people like how much fun it is, and that it is the antidote for, sort of loneliness, and like you can actually make connections with real people in real life.
You're
Like,
speaking my language, because this is the kind
yeah.
of stuff that we're trying to like strengthen and encourage to people with the Totem organization.
But all that's kind of like the stuff that like means a lot to me about the Bonner experience, and I think is important to share with sort of the younger generation. But in practice, it's just having fun on the internet.
Well, true. You got one more
One
shot?
of,
Oh, go ahead,
can I,
Brad.
yeah, can I just chime in real quick on something?
Go for
It's the only probably coherent thought I've had on this entire call, so
it.
I figured I should share it. Um, Cory has been working on, you'll see this soon, and I don't know if we didn't even talk about this on the What podcast, I don't think, but um we're launching our first student ticket program this year. Cory's done a phenomenal job putting it together, and that's another thing that's really focusing on trying to curate that younger audience. We have a very unique challenge, but also opportunity with a festival like Bonnaroo. Sorry, my cats are fighting in the background.
Oh,
Great
let
for
them go, man.
um, we have a unique challenge, but also creates a unique opportunity where we're one of the few festival brands in the U.S. that has, successfully cycled through an entire generation of fan. And whether we're talking with, partners like talking with you all in the What podcast, or we're talking with our team internally, I've been emphasizing recently that the fans that got us through the first 20 years are not the same fans that'll get us through the next 20 years. And we have to do a really delicate balance of keeping both of those fans in mind in the time that we're in right now. And so that I don't even know what we're on now, what the newest generation
Alpha.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gen Alpha. We'll just go with that. Um, these kids that are in high school and about to go venture into college, like we've got to find a way to speak to them with Bonnaroo the way that we spoke to the Underground Jam fans in 2002. And despite anyone not liking it, the truth is the way we're going to do that is through stuff like TikTok. So, um, very key to our success moving forward of being able to cycle in an entire new generation that we've got to get excited about coming to Manchester, and Cory and Alex and everyone on the marketing team. That's a huge challenge, and they are doing an absolutely fantastic job figuring out how to navigate that and really paint a picture of this magical space that we create for 4 or 5 days in Manchester, and why someone should commit, a paycheck essentially to coming and having a fun weekend with us. So it's a lot of hard work, and I just want to give Cory his flowers here and say that he does an incredible job at it.
Thanks, man. I think another thing that we always try to do too is just keep the cost down.
Yeah.
I think we have a larger, area to do our show, which means we can accommodate more people and, more tickets, it's more money. And obviously it's a fortune to produce, but some of our the other shows, on the East Coast that are camping festivals that are still around that are awesome shows, they have had to make the difficult decision to go ahead and go up to, pretty high pricing just to get in the door. Like the last couple of years, I've seen 500, 550, almost $600 just for the ticket. And we're gonna, like, we always look at what the bare minimum we could charge is, and especially in those, lower tiers for people who are willing to get in early. And we try to keep that as low as possible. And I think that's part of what the student ticket is too. We're calling it officially the Bonnaroo freshman plan, which I think is funny.
Freshman, I love it.
But
I love it.
it's just like, man, I know how much money I had when I was in college, and it wasn't great. And so just to try to, pass along the most savings to those people so they can come and have those experiences, even though they don't have a ton of money.
It makes me feel great that you guys are considering this younger generation because they have taken a lot of hits. Somebody that I always have in mind is somebody that essentially came of age during COVID. They probably
Hmm.
skipped their spring break, skipped their high school graduation, a real freshman experience in college. And I really feel, and I'm biased, but I really feel that something like Bonnaroo is something that can give them the kind of like social skills, leadership skills, and confidence that they should have gotten in that area. I feel so strongly we started a 501c3 that supports that.
Hmm.
So that's kind of my last question for you guys. It's kind of like totem related. So when you guys were on back in January, February, whenever it was, I asked you for advice on how people could get into the industry, people of that age, if this is what they want to do. And now that we've worked with one totem class, I've learned they definitely do. They want to work in this industry that you work in. This time I want to ask you about the state of the industry. Like, how stable is it to have a job in that particular market? Can somebody stay in a position if they want to? How often would they have to move? Do they need to like move laterally to get to get a promotion? I'm just curious if both of you could speak to that.
Yeah. I mean, I know Brad does a lot more work with sort of like trying to inspire the next generation and stuff in the music industry than I do, if we're being honest. But I'll say first off, just based on my experience, I've been working in music for 10 or 12 years now. And I've never felt like my job was in jeopardy. Um, it's there's not as many jobs as there are if you go to school for logistics or engineering or something. It's definitely very challenging to get that first job. But it is more about the network you create. So I think I could see some people being at a disadvantage with certain personality types. If you're not super talkative and annoying and goofy like me and Brad are,
No,
I
never.
could see that being a little bit of a disadvantage. But I definitely, it's also one of those where like if you're passionate about it, you can definitely do it. And it's also like my main advice that I always give folks is to just try it by yourself at first. Like it's one of those industries where you can start your business with almost no investment. Like if that's booking bands or, promoting local concerts or artist management, none of those things have, $20,000 worth of supplies that you have to buy in order to be able to, do this side hustle or whatnot. So that's what I always encourage people to do. I'm like, if you've got like a buddy that is getting 10, 15 people out to their local show and you believe in them and you think they're really good, try to get 40 people out to their next one. And then that goes on your resume, you know? And I know Brad has some stuff to add here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, go for it,
No,
Brad. Tell us, like, how do you feel the state of the industry is now for like somebody in a younger generation?
I think that it's an extremely rewarding industry. I think it is extremely challenging at the same time. I think that we are in a unique position as an industry because we lost a lot of talented people out of our industry during COVID that went and found jobs elsewhere while live music was kind of shut down, and that left a need for a lot of really qualified and passionate individuals to come into our business. But it's also a business that requires a ton of patience because I talk to kids all the time that'll be like, what's your advice for me? I want to be a festival director. And, if you look at all the festivals in the United States, there's probably 100 festival directors, right? Maybe it's 200. Like it's not like there's 1,000 festival director jobs that are going to be open, but there's a lot of entry level positions in this industry that require you to kind of get your foot in the door and then sit and be very patient and learn a lot. This industry revolves kind of what Cory was hinting at earlier. This industry revolves so much around soft skills and not technical skills. It's great to have the technical skills, but most of the technical skills that you would need, Cory or I can teach those to you. The soft skills that you need to be able to be a great leader, lead with empathy, understand where people are coming from, carry a conversation, foster new relationships, like just carry a conversation with a stranger. That's stuff that like can't be taught in a classroom or from a mentor necessarily. It's something that you kind of just have to have. Um, and so I tell everybody, come on in, baby. Like the water feels great. There's lots of ways to get your foot in the door if you're willing to work really hard.
Well,
Um,
Brad, I can tell you, as far as those soft skills go that you're talking about, the future looks very bright because the three kids, I shouldn't even call them kids, the three that we had this past year as our inaugural Totem Scholarship class had that in spades. I was like just so impressed with what they were able to do. They were asking questions of the crew that was putting together the programming out in the group plaza. They were kind of like talking with some of your crew, like, hey, how does this work? I'm not trying to scare you, but some of our class might be taking your job one of these days.
Hey, I welcome that because one of my roles whenever I got in a position in my career where I was, either hiring people directly or a part of hiring people that were, in some way reporting to me or underneath me, my number one rule is I don't hire anybody that I don't think couldn't do my job better. Because that's the only way that this industry uh survives and moves forward and is innovative is that if you aren't scared to hire these people just because you're scared for your own job. You
Yeah.
should be scared for your own job at any given time. That's the excitement that I like to keep in my life is hiring people like we've got a girl named Shelby on our team that we've worked with for a long time. She's probably smarter than Cory and I combined times five, and I know without a doubt one day she will be my boss. I'm totally fine with that. I look
I
forward.
was joking earlier in our Slack channel about how if we had a Shelby, we didn't need a Brad, and
Oh,
maybe I wasn't joking. I don't know.
watch out, man. Oh my God.
I think it hurt Brad's feelings though, so I told him I was joking.
That's why my camera's off because I've been crying for the past.
Well, thank you so much, guys. That's good advice.
thank you.
That kind of stuff has clearly turned into one of our main passions in the past 2 or 3 years because, like, Cory, you joked about it earlier, but we're not getting any younger, and like it has turned into a goal for me and Sharla to make sure that the next generation is going to take the baton and make
Hmm.
Bonnaroo just as weird as it's always been. And I can
Yeah.
tell you from having done this for a year and change now, I'm not worried about that. We're in good hands with this next generation, man. All right, you
Hmm.
guys have been generous with your time. I got one last question for you. Brad, there is going to be a totem with your Twitter thing on it saying interesting at Rue this coming year because you've made yourself a meme. I'm
Hell
curious
yeah.
if you guys could give us any hints at all that you're willing to give that will make the audience go interesting about anything you want to tell us about for next year.
Maybe we already did.
Oh. Hey, I'm just going to say I couldn't help but notice the shirt that you're wearing there, Cory.
What
I'll
shirt?
throw I'll throw out a word. I'll throw out a word that will without any context is kind of boring, but just to get all the people in a downward spiral thinking about it.
Oh, God.
Um, I'll throw out the word residency. That's what I'll throw out
I
there.
think I know what you're talking about, and you just freaked me out.
No, there's no way that you know what I'm talking about, but I'm just going to throw that out
Well,
there.
wait. I'm going to play games for a little bit here because this is audio only. Don't say what's on it, but look at Cory's shirt. That's why I just gasped when you said that.
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, that's a good one. You already freaked people out about this Thursday thing. I hope you know. I hope you saw that.
That's the whole point of what we're doing, baby. We're just trying to get people excited.
Well,
Everyone
you're
just
doing,
needs to show up on Thursday and have a good time, man. It's gonna be awesome.
you're
Oh,
doing.
and we've got some really good stuff cooking for late night. So
Oh, late night's
yeah,
crazy.
late night might be the best late night that we've had in a long time.
It's
So
gonna.
There's a lot of stuff this year that I was just like, oh man, that's good.
Ah. Cory, are you going to get off the clock and go see some of that stuff with us?
We'll see. I'll try.
Uh, well, for me, it's
It's
going
tough,
to be.
man. There's always so much going on. I'm very good at like popping in for a second, but I'm not very good at seeing whole shows anymore, unfortunately.
I know what you mean. Well,
There's
you guys
always
are getting
stuff.
me hyped up about late night because last year was almost perfect for me with that pretty light sunrise set. That was just majestic. So if you got something even better in store, I'm excited. Clearly, my ticket is already sold. I'm always happy to be there for the party, but it sounds like this year is going to be a pretty darn good one from what you guys have been giving us. So again, thank you for your hints, and all of us are very, very excited to see that poster come January.
thanks for
Yeah,
having
and
us.
thanks for all you guys do. You guys
Dude.
make this a lot these off seasons a lot of fun.
Especially this time
It's
of year.
definitely fun to have, a whole community to like bounce stuff off of and mess around with than me and Brad just sitting on Zoom pulling our hair out trying to figure out what the best decision is to
Well, look,
make.
man, it's easy for me to blow smoke for y'all because y'all literally throw what I genuinely have believed is the greatest party on the planet. But we have to do it for the community too, because like none of y'all's competitors have this community, and it's what keeps us and many others coming back. And for y'all to get knee deep in it and foster it is greatly, greatly appreciated.
It's
Man,
fun, man.
we're really well. First of all, appreciate your all's time and the compliments as always. We're like really hyped up about next year, and it kind of we're at that point in the year where it just kind of sucks because now we just have to wait another month and a half to
I
really
know.
let the world know what we're so excited about. But it's going to be worth it, and I think it'll once you all see it, it'll become very clear why we've been trying to hype it up so much over these past couple weeks.
Well, good deal.
I got one more thing to add actually. This
Oh,
isn't like the best closing statement, but I just wanted to say like with us being like everyone knows that we're lurking around Reddit and everyone knows that we're, obviously messing around in the Discord now and stuff. And I just wanted to say like to everybody that listens to this and for you guys and stuff, like don't hesitate to be critical. Like
oh,
I know that it's maybe harder, once everyone gets to know us a little bit to, voice frustrations or, shortcomings and stuff. But like that's how we learn too. I always appreciate a kind tone, obviously. That's good for keeping the vibes up, but like I just don't want anyone to hold back, man. That's how we learn and that's how we figure out what to improve on. So just because we're, hanging out in those areas, I don't want anyone to feel like they're going to hurt our feelings. We definitely want to hear the good and the bad.
Well, I can tell you, Cory, a lot of people have those kind of comments because they genuinely love it so much. I think that's a good problem to have, that people are that invested because they intend on coming back and they want it to continue to be their favorite place in the world.
Mhm. I hesitate to even, join the conversation sometimes because I don't want to sort of like tip the scale at all. But it is really fun to, get to chat with everyone and stuff. So,
Well, we appreciate you guys hanging out. It means a lot to us. And seriously, Brad, thank you so much for hanging out with us today because we didn't talk about this while we were recording, but he's not exactly at 100% today. So I really appreciate you hanging out with us.
I'll be recovered soon, and if anybody needs a heating pad, let me know. I got one that they can borrow.
All right. Well, hey, just both of you come to the bus for a stiff drink when you're not on the clock. We'll hook you up.
Sounds
Thanks,
good.
man.
All right.
Appreciate you all. Good talking with you guys.
Oh, yeah, always. We appreciate you guys so much. Thank you so much.
See ya.
All right, that was so awesome. So big thanks to Brad and Cory for that interview.
Yeah. I got to call them out individually for different reasons. First of all, Brad is on, even though he wasn't feeling 100% today. He texted me earlier today and told me his situation. So I'm very thankful that he spent over an hour with us. And thanks to Cory for that as well, because like Brad mentioned, this is his Super Bowl. He's about to go into pre-sales and everything. And that is a really hardcore time for him, doing a lot of the day job stuff. So he's doing that in addition to his country cover band that we didn't even talk about in this interview. You were wearing their shirt yesterday. Give them a shout out.
Yeah. The Boot Scoot and Boogie Nights.
Yeah. So we have seen them. You've seen them twice now because we saw them at Rue.
No, I've seen them 3 times.
3 times?
Yes.
Wait, there was the barn show at Rue, and then you saw them here at the Electric Bell in Huntsville. What was the third
They
one?
also played the Who stage.
Oh, I missed that one.
Yeah,
I heard
you weren't
Taco
there,
was
yeah.
at that one as
Yeah.
well. Yeah, I missed that one. I was at another show. No offense, Cory. I was just
You
at
know
something
who
else.
was at that? Mitchell.
Was he?
Yeah.
Because of course he was. Yeah. Yeah. Shout out to Mitchell for no reason in particular. But again, thank you so much, guys. It is so nice that the guys that are throwing the party are willing to come on to the Fan Focus podcast like this on both of these podcasts, the What and then ours. So I got to tell you, I'm not just joking around. I really appreciate y'all being so ingrained with the community like this. It really does mean a lot. And we got a lot of good info out of that, I feel like.
That was great.
It's good to know that they're so fan focused. They're thinking about us in terms of like shade everywhere, because that's a big issue when it literally is that scene from Rick and Morty when the sun is screaming at you. Some of these other things that we talked about, making sure that everyone is comfortable. And I feel like I don't want to talk about it because I don't want to jinx it, but I feel like we got a very good hint buried in there.
I saw another hint buried
What
in
was
there.
that?
No, I'm not going to say it.
Oh, we don't do video, so we can't
We
say what
can't
it
do
was.
video,
Yeah.
we don't say- I said it on the Discord the other day.
Did you?
I was like, I don't want to say this, but
I saw
said
it
it on
too.
Discord.
Yeah. Oh boy, I should not talk because I promised not to give anything
And I
away.
started to say it. I started to say it when we were recording. I started asking about it when we were recording, but I didn't want to be that guy. So
Well, I think it's fun that they do this kind of stuff. They know that we're driving ourselves crazy in rumor season, and I think
yeah.
they kind of have fun trolling us about it. Brad especially, with all this interesting stuff. He does this on purpose just to drive us crazy. You know it, right?
oh, well,
Yeah.
so he says he trolls, but he underestimates my ability to troll back.
Oh, you heard that, Brad, I hope. Yeah, we really are going to do
I'm
this camp
teasing.
flag or totem. It's just going to be like one of his Twitter things saying like, interesting. Interesting. We keep finding gifs of like Spock or whoever saying
I have a
interesting.
fantastic idea for that totem, but I
What?
can't say it. I'm just going to surprise everyone.
Oh, okay. All right. Don't even tell me. I want to be surprised.
I already told you.
You did?
Yeah.
All right. There is a lot more that we can talk about, but since we have talked with them for over an hour already, I think that is all we need for this week. We're going to have a lot more content for you guys to come in the upcoming weeks, months, whatever. We're going to have a poster before you know it in probably less than 2 months now. It's crazy. We're going to start hearing a lot from Cory and his team when it comes to pre-sales here in just a couple of weeks too. And we have Recluse coming, like next week, if you think about it? Because they dropped on the What podcast that Recluse will start on Black Friday. So that's literally next Friday.
Well,
Bruce,
it's the Friday after next. No,
Is it?
it's next Friday. You're right.
I just realized a question I wanted to ask, but I didn't.
What?
If they had any plans for Friday the 13th, because there's going to be a Friday the 13th at Bonnaroo. Okay, we'll just ask that.
There's never been any big thing. Well, except the time Kanye played. But
that was a weird night. Kanye did play in 2014 on Friday the 13th, and I think that was very fitting. That's where the press ad thing came from.
Yeah.
But you know what?
Anyways.
We can just follow up on Discord. So, shout out to the Festiverse Discord and Caitlin, who helps out with that. You can literally go ask those guys questions. They have been coming in there pretty frequently. So if there's a question we didn't hit on today, they have been fielding questions there pretty regularly. It's so nice of them to be so transparent.
Hey, but guess what? You guys can also join our Discord because we're almost at 500 Bonnaroovians and counting.
I didn't know that we passed 420.
Oh, we've been past 450. We're at 450 something.
Oh, okay. Well, that's pretty good.
But yes, if you want to talk Bonnaroo year-round, go join our Discord, and you can find it in all of our social media links on all of our social media channels, The Real Brew Bus.
Oh, thank you for the plug, babe. Yeah. All right. Let's leave it at that. I think we got a lot this week already. That was fantastic. So again, I've said it already, but thanks to Brad and Cory for taking the time. Brad was kind of hit up, not feeling great, and Cory's busy. So it really means a lot to us that y'all came on. So we'll see y'all next week, I suppose. Mm-hmm. All right, guys, get out there and radiate positivity. We'll see you soon.
Bye.